What's up, guys? Continuing episode 4 today of my Puckpedia off-season series. Today we got the Calgary Flames. Flames got a nice young core kind of coming in. A lot of pieces that they've recently acquired or guys they've drafted that are now starting to take on full-time roles higher up in their lineup, and starting to build the foundations for the rebuild. The only thing they're really lacking now is kind of that star power to go with it. So today I'm going to be looking at what they should do this offseason to kind of help continue their rebuild and keep on that process that they've already started. So let's dive right into it. I mean, we can see that they already got multiple first-round picks. They have 4 over the next 2 years. And that's not even including the picks that they can get from assets that they'll probably trade, like Kadri and Anderson. So, I think the rebuild is in full swing for them, and it's going really well. Maybe better than some people think or know. So we'll hop right into the signings. Today I figured I'd show a little bit more behind my reasoning for how much I pay guys, just because on my last roster I was getting a little bit of hate for it in the comments. People thinking I'm just signing guys blindly to what I think they're worth, but there is a little bit of logic that goes into it, believe it or not. So the first signing here, we got Morgan Frost. So we're going to sign him. He is playing as if he is worth $3.5 million. And using AFP analytics, you guys should really go check them out. They have great contract projections, not just for free agents, but for extensions as well. But looking at what they got for Morgan Frost, is they think he'll sign in the range of almost $6 million for 5 years. He's playing like he's worth $3.5 million. The reason he gets such a big bump in his pay is because he's young and has a lot of promise. So I think if you're the Flames GM, you'd want to sign him to like $5.5 million for probably 5 years. Have him play center. He'll probably slot in towards the top of the lineup. Put him here for now. Put Backlund down on the third line. Next guy is Kevin Ball. For him, he is playing as if he's worth $2.4 million, and AFP has him projected to sign for, $3 million for 2 years, and he's playing like it's 2.4. But just like Frost, I mean, he's young, and I think there's a lot more promise to his game than what the analytics here show. So I'll give him kind of what AFP says, $3 million for 2 years. I think it's fair. It's not a big commitment. It gives him a good chunk of money that he might feel like he's worth, and that he can kind of work to earn. So we'll put him on the second pair right now on the left side. Put Jake Bean there on the third pair. Next free agent is, next RFA is Connor Zary. So Zary's worth is $3.7 million, and they have him projected to extend for, if it's a short-term extension, they have him $3.5 million for 3 years, and for longer term, it's more like $5.5 million for 6 years. I don't really, think either of those is what I'll go for. I think I'm gonna kind of go like right down the middle. I'm gonna do $4.5 million for 4 years. Not a crazy commitment, but also not, super high risk either. Like if they were to sign him for a long-term one for $5.7 million for 6 years, I mean, that's a long time, right? And that could really blow up in your face, especially in the middle of a rebuild. So I think giving him a cap hit of $4.5 million for 4 years is pretty good, especially with the cap rising. If this turns out to be a bad contract, it's not like it's as consequential as if it was like almost $6 million. So I think we'll go with this. I think this is fair, and kind of makes him earn his worth. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into some trades here. I think some guys that are probably going to be gone this summer are Kadri and Anderson. I also have a trade for Huberdeau. That's more just, for fun, for the hypothetical. I don't really think that'll happen. But for the first trade, I'm going to go with the Kadri one. I have Kadri getting traded to Carolina because they really need a second-line center, and he kind of fills that hole perfectly for them. So we'll send him to Carolina at a price of $4.5 million. So we'll retain $2.5 million. And in exchange for Jackson Blake, Dallas's 2026 first, which they got in the Rantanen trade. And yeah, just that straight up for Kadri. So Kadri at 4.5 mil for Jackson Blake and a first. And I think that's pretty fair. Maybe a little bit of an overpay for Carolina for him. I think maybe this is a little bit in favor of Calgary, but it's kind of hard to gauge the value of trades like these, especially when it's like guys who aren't, as talked about in trade talks. So it's hard to kind of get other people's perspectives on how much they think they're worth. But I think this is pretty close to fair, especially if you're retaining 2.5 mil on him. I mean, getting Kadri for 4.5 mil as your 2C if you're Carolina is pretty good. Maybe Carolina has to add a pick here, but I'm kind of confident that this can maybe go through. Actually, never mind. This is definitely an overpay on Carolina's part. We'll redo this. We'll add a second, I think, for Calgary to send out. So Blake and Dallas's first, which isn't going to be a very good first, but it isn't a good draft. The 2026 draft is pretty stacked, apparently. So, yeah. So we'll add a second. Just for their troubles, I guess. And 2.5 mil. And then bang, send that through. Next trade, I have Rasmus Anderson getting traded to Dallas. If you look at Dallas's depth chart, they have a serious hole at their right D, which I think Rasmus Anderson could fill perfectly. I think right now on the right side they have like Dumba, Lyubushkin, and what was the last one? I think it might have been Nils Lundqvist and Cody Ceci. So, that's not exactly a great right side defense. So, I mean, Anderson's definitely going to bring back a first at least. I also have the Stars giving up Christian Kyrou for him and Maverick Bork because they are going to have to get rid of him. So, might as well get rid of him in a trade where you get some pretty good value in return, right? Or they could let him go to an offer sheet. But if you're Calgary, I don't know if Kyrou in a first is enough for Anderson. It kind of depends what the market is for him. This might also be hard for Dallas to do because you'll have to re-sign him after 1 year. He's currently at a cap hit of 4.5 mil, but I think next year it'll probably be more like 7 to 8 mil. So Dallas would have to clear some money for that maybe if they don't have the immediate funds to make it work. But after signing Bork, after trading for Bork, we're gonna go and sign him. Let's see what Dom's model says for his value. AFP has him at, let's see, Bork, 2 mil for 2 years. So that's what they have in his projected extension at. And looks like he is a player who's worth, if this would load, $3 million. So just because he's young and has some promise, I'm going to give him 3.2 million for 2 years. Might be a little bit of an overpay for him, but honestly, that's not the worst thing in the world. So then I'm going to trade Huberdeau here. So I'm going to put Farabee here. Move Bork up here. These two, Bork and Blake, could be interchangeable here pretty much. For Huberdeau, I mean, it's hard to get rid of him because his contract is so big, right? And he's certainly fallen off from at the time when he signed that. But I'm going to go for another guy who kind of, isn't playing up to what he's getting paid. So if you look here after trading Anderson, there's a pretty big hole at the right defense. You have Parekh who will come up and fill this in a few years, but I don't think he's there quite yet. He's about to play his rookie season, so I find it hard to believe that he'll be good enough right away to just slot in and fill that RD1 hole. I think that'll probably take at least 1 year for him to get into. So for the time being, I think this guy will fill. I think Severson could fill that hole. Retained at 1.25 mil. So the Flames get him at 5 mil on the dot for 6 more years. which is exactly the length of time Huberdeau signed. And we're also going to retain on Huberdeau a little bit. We'll do let's do 4 mil flat. They get him at 6.5. So yeah, Columbus would get him at 6.5 mil. And Calgary would get Severson at 5 mil, which I don't think the value on that would be very fair. So I think they'd also have to give up a pick in order to make it work. So we'll go Severson, retain, plus a second in exchange for Huberdeau at 6.5 mil. I think Columbus gets pretty good value out of this. They have some good left wingers already, but getting a guy like Huberdeau in your lineup, especially after the year they had last year, I think they're going to try and build off that and be competitive. So I think bringing in Huberdeau at retained cap hit is a high risk, high reward move. And if you could do it while dumping Severson and a second, and maybe even giving up like a prospect, we'll go Malatesta. I think that's pretty good value for both sides. And Calgary's kind of able to create more roster spots for all the young forwards that they have, while also filling that RD hole left behind by Anderson and bringing in some younger assets and pick. So I think this is a good trade for both sides. So Severson at 5 mil will slot in right here. This does leave, in excess of defense. Also, I don't know if Devin Cooley's good enough to be a backup goalie. He is 28, so it's definitely now or never. It's maybe even past now or never for them. So looking at the holes that are still left in the lineup, is a backup goalie and then fourth liners. So I think some good free agent signings to do. Nothing crazy. We'll go pretty cheap and insignificant, but I think Steven Lorentz for fourth line center. I think 2 years is about 1.5 mil, maybe a little bit more if you have to, but he kind of brings some grit to the lineup. Putting him there, could just give a little boost to that bottom six. And I think bringing Daniel Sprong, not a very, needle-moving signing, but he could bring some fourth-line scoring. And then I think for backup goalie, we'll go with Samsonov. And only 1 year, I'll do 2.1 mil just because, in case you have to overpay him a little bit just to get him. It's only for 1 year, so it shouldn't, hurt too bad. Also, I think Miramanov, you could probably trade him. I don't think it really matters where or, what the return is. But, this roster at least has kind of created a little bit of a logjam on defense. So I think you could just shed him for, probably like a fifth. Really any asset you could get for him should be fine. It doesn't really matter. So you do anywhere. And this kind of helps round out the roster, keep it a little bit cleaner. Another move I'm going to do is I'm going to buy out Ryan Lomberg just because this buyout's not too bad. It's almost $700,000 for only 2 years. So, he didn't really have a great year last year after signing in Calgary. So I think letting him go is not the worst thing. And again, these two are interchangeable. So looking at this lineup, this looks pretty good. There's a lot of young pieces here that I think could be here for a long time, and guys who will have value in trade if they don't pan out exactly as is, or if there's other holes that kind of present themselves as you continue in this process. So I think trading some of them will probably be a realistic expectation for the future. And also, even if you keep them and it works out, like you're still missing your top guys. I think, some guys who can play first line and really, be your 100-point guys, like what Johnny Gaudreau kind of was for them. So bringing back in guys like that, I think that would be a next year thing. That wouldn't probably happen this offseason just because right now you're still kind of trying to build the foundation of the rebuild. And going out and making big moves for guys who are already stars probably isn't what you'd want to do. You probably want to find guys who fit your timeline better, especially now with all these first-round picks in the next few years. Even if these two are hypothetical, right? Like you still have 4 in the next 2 years, maybe even 5, and then even 7 in the next 3 years. I think you're bound to accidentally draft a star player at some point in there, even if most of those picks miss. Because, the Devils won, the Florida one, both Dallas ones and the Vegas one are all going to be later picks. So the ones you really want to hit on are the Calgary picks. But even with this roster, I mean, I think this is a team that'll be playoff bubble. I think they could sneak into a wild card spot easily, especially if the West is weak or if some teams underperform. So having seven mid to high picks over the next 3 years, I think at least one of them should hopefully turn into a good star player who could play top six, preferably first line, especially in the 2026 draft since it's a deeper draft. And I don't know much about the 2027 draft, so maybe that one's just as deep. I know Landon Dupont's probably projected to go first overall. I don't think you'll be in the realm for him or Gavin McKenna in 2026, but still kind of finding, those young pieces that you can build, that you could slot in around this core, kind of help get your team back to contention. I mean, in a few years, I'm not going to extend Backlund here just because he's 36. AFP, I think, had him at like 4 mil for 1 year projected extension. Maybe it's 4.5. Actually, look, because I'm sure some of you would probably be interested to see this. They have him, 4.5 mil for 2 years. So, do I think he's going for that much? I don't know. It kind of depends on the season he has, which is why I don't extend him now. Same with Blake, because Blake's analytics are actually pretty good. So this had him going at a pretty hefty price. So I think long term they said they'd have 7x7. And short term is like 4 mil by 2 years. I'm just not going to sign him this offseason because I think it's a move that you wait to do at the end of the season after you see, how he does in the system with the new team. So I think giving him that time to kind of figure his game out in Calgary, and then signing him after is probably the smart way to go. So I'm not going to jump on either one of those signings just yet. But overall, I mean, I think this team is pretty good. There was actually one signing I forgot to do. I forgot to extend Dustin Wolf. We're going to do this 8x8, big boy deal. AFP has him at 8x6. But I think if you're giving him an $8 million contract, obviously it's in his best interest to not sign for too long with the cap going up. And I mean, ideally, if he plays like he's projected to, right, he'll be worth more in the future. But I think if the team commits to giving him 8 mil now already, even though he's not quite worth that yet, you're more gambling on his future. So I don't think they do it for 6 years though. If they give him 8 mil, it'd probably be more for 8 years. So it's a win-win for both sides because Wolf's getting money that he hasn't exactly shown that he's worth quite yet. The promise is obviously there, and he had a great year this past season as a rookie. So the promise is definitely there. I think signing him for 8 mil for 8 years is ideal for the team just because you get him locked up longer term. And I mean, the 8 mil for him now is probably pretty ideal for him as a player, just because, securing the bag is obviously what they want to do. So now that we can have him extended, I think this kind of leaves the final look of this lineup for this coming season. Biggest weakness is definitely the D core. I mean, maybe Severson can bounce back a little bit, but I wouldn't really bet on that. It's also, I don't know if he'd come here just because it looks like he has an NMC, but still, obviously that trade's hypothetical. I mean, obviously all of them are hypothetical. Some of them, the value might be a little bit in favor of Calgary. But overall, I'd say they're pretty close to fair. But this D core is kind of weak. I think the top 6 is pretty strong. Even the top 9 is pretty strong. It's young. These 2 guys will probably be gone. And those holes can get filled in by younger guys, newer guys. I know they have Hanzek, who they drafted a few years ago, who he's probably going to be ready not this year, but the following year. So these holes will get filled by something eventually. And even then, it could be, these guys slotting down and bringing in better guys, whether you draft them or trade or sign free agents. But I think this current roster right here leaves a lot of room of possibility. You have guys who could be valuable enough to trade for star players. You have guys who could overperform. You have guys who might underperform. And that'll create some shifting around where, you could fill those holes with new guys. So that's going to do it for today's video. I think this team is pretty good. I kind of like this roster a lot for Calgary. Again, maybe some of these trades are a little bit more in favor of Calgary, but you look at all the assets that they have picks, they have prospects, they have roster guys, young roster guys even. So you could easily add more to any of these trades on the Calgary side, right? So I know people are probably going to flame me in the comments on Puckpedia for not, for being a homer, even though I'm not a Calgary fan. But you could easily add more to any of these trades. It doesn't really matter, and balance them out for both sides. So I'm gonna link this roster to the YouTube description. So feel free to go visit that link, and you can comment either on YouTube or directly in Puckpedia, which seems to be more popular because a lot of people do look through these rosters. So yeah, so drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.